The saloon doors slammed open, dust swirling around the stranger's boots. Every head turned, whispers chasing him like wind across the prairie. Then came the words that froze the room. 3 times a day. And what he did next left the whole town stunned, questioning everything they thought they knew about courage, justice, and human hearts. The sun scorched the plains as the stranger rode into Dry Creek, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of dust that shimmered in the afternoon heat. Nobody knew his name, and that suited him fine. He carried only a leather satchel, a battered hat pulled low over sharp eyes, and an air of quiet authority that made every rancher, gambler, and saloon girl pause. The townsfolk were used to strangers, but this one carried a weight they couldn't name. The sense that whatever he intended would ripple through Dry Creek like a lightning strike. By late afternoon, the saloon doors swung open, and he entered, boots clanking, eyes scanning. 3 times a day. He said to no one in particular, voice low, deliberate. The bartender froze mid-pour. A poker game paused mid-hand. Even the children on the street outside peered through cracks in shutters. People whispered, but nobody dared ask. The stranger walked to the bar, his eyes settling on a woman seated alone, nervously twisting a handkerchief in her hands. She had a secret, one she had buried for years, one the whole town had ignored, and one the stranger seemed to know by sight alone. He tipped his hat slightly, and then, in a move that shocked everyone, he knelt beside her chair and whispered something she couldn't quite hear, yet it sent a shiver down her spine. By the time he left the saloon, the crowd outside was buzzing, uneasy. Whispers multiplied, guessing at his motives. But the woman, pale and trembling, looked at him with a mix of fear and awe. She didn't know why, but she felt certain this man had changed everything, and that the day had only just begun. That evening, as the sun sank behind the distant messes, the stranger returned, carrying a small bundle of supplies and a notebook. The woman, who had remained cloaked in shadows, followed him to the edge of town, curiosity overpowering fear. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, voice calm but firm. She shook her head, hands trembling. "I have no choice. They won't let me rest." The stranger's eyes softened, but he did not flinch. He knelt beside her again and began writing in the notebook, sketching symbols she didn't recognize. 3 times a day, he muttered under his breath, checking the notes carefully. It must be precise. Otherwise chaos. She stared at him, confusion mingling with awe. "What are you doing?" she finally asked. He didn't look up. "I'm giving you a chance to reclaim your life," he said simply, almost like a prophecy. The townsfolk, hidden behind fences and windows, began to murmur. They had no idea that in that quiet clearing on the edge of town, the stranger was performing an act that would ripple across every life in Dry Creek. By nightfall, the woman had completed the first task, and though it seemed small, subtle, almost invisible, it marked the beginning of a transformation that would shock everyone when revealed. The next morning, the stranger returned, riding a horse that glinted in the early sun. The woman was waiting at the same clearing, heart racing. Word of the stranger's odd behavior had spread through town, and curious onlookers peeked from rooftops, alleyways, and behind shutters. 3 times a day, they whispered, trying to understand what had begun to feel like a ritual, strange, cryptic, and terrifying in its implication. The stranger began his second act, guiding the woman through a series of precise movements, walking the ridges of the prairie, arranging small items in a circle, speaking quietly but insistently. The woman's confidence grew, her fear slowly melting into purpose. By mid-afternoon, townsfolk who had come to gawk watched in stunned silence as the woman performed her task flawlessly. The stranger stepped back, his eyes sweeping over the silent crowd. "See," he said quietly to the woman, "you are stronger than they ever imagined." Gasps ran through the observers. Some clenched their fists in disbelief. Others whispered apologies for ever doubting her. By sunset, the word had spread the stranger had unlocked something in her that the town never saw coming. Courage, dignity, and authority. On the 3rd day, the tension was unbearable. Every townsperson seemed to have gathered, hiding behind fences, leaning from rooftops, or crouched behind barrels. The woman stepped forward confidently, following the stranger's instructions, no longer trembling. 3 times a day, he murmured, voice almost reverent. And then the final move. She faced the crowd and spoke, her voice ringing clear across the dusty street. She revealed the truth of her years, injustices, hidden skills, intelligence, and resilience no one had acknowledged. The townsfolk were stunned into silence. Their disbelief turned to admiration, then awe, as they realized the stranger hadn't merely helped her survive. He had orchestrated a path that revealed her strength to herself and to them. The crowd erupted into cheers, finally recognizing the courage they had overlooked for so long. The stranger tipped his hat, mounted his horse, and rode off into the sunset, leaving behind a transformed town and a woman who now stood proud and unafraid. The lesson was clear. Sometimes it takes a stranger, a calculated plan, and a little courage 3 times a day to awaken the hero inside. So if this story of mystery, courage, and transformation moved you, make sure to like and subscribe, because more breathtaking Wild West tales like this ride in with every sunset,